But let's get to the key thing. And I remind people, Senator Cotton, before he became a politician and after he is a Harvard-trained lawyer, walked point for patrol in the suburbs in the city of Baghdad during the surge as an Army Ranger in command of soldiers. And so I don't believe the demonstrators or the screaming mobs would have intimidated you or Todd Young or Joni Ernst or Dan Sullivan, any of the combat veterans. But what was it like last week in the Senate, and what does that say in the hallways of the Senate buildings, and what does that say about what's going on in politics?
Yeah, even more so than Baghdad or Afghanistan, I recall basic training where I essentially had Drill Sergeant Norton screaming at me for 9 straight weeks.
Yeah. So this is nothing compared to Drill Sergeant Norton?
I say that advisedly, is that, part of what they do in basic training is try to teach you to perform under pressure with lots of distraction around you. And I'd say that the scene on Capitol Hill was something like that last week. Our office buildings were open to the public. Arkansans were coming in to see me. I was sitting down with a large group of Arkansans, in fact, and there was a large group of protesters in the hallway screaming at Joni Ernst across the hallway. So I walked in and I said, I don't know what you guys did, but those people are really angry at you. It was disruptive to a degree. Not so much for me. I mean, I'm fine, but I do feel badly about all those Arkansans who are coming in to try to make their case for this or that policy in the government, or just for grandmas and grandpas who had their kids there for a Capitol tour. It made it very hard to move around. But it was much worse than that. Susan Collins was getting death threats, and her staff was getting rape threats. She had to be escorted by a security detail to and from her home each morning because a crazed mob was protesting outside of her home a few blocks from the Capitol. That's when the radical left in the country has gone too far, when they're protesting Susan Collins at her home for voting in what she thinks is the right way for this country. It's fine to protest peacefully outside the Capitol. It's fine to give money to someone's opponent. It's fine to knock doors for them. But going to Susan Collins' home to protest her is a bridge too far. And most Americans realize it's a bridge too far. That's one reason why so many Americans across the country are revolted by the crazed mob the Democratic Party under Chuck Schumer whipped up over the last 3 weeks.
Is there any doubt in your mind, Senator Cotton, that this was planned long before it was unveiled? And by that I mean the leak of Dr. Ford's letter. I don't know who did it, but I believe it was part of a campaign that was set up to occur exactly when it did. Do you agree with me?
So, Hugh, I believe the Schumer political operation was behind this from the very beginning. We learned last week that a woman named Monica McClain was Miss Ford's roommate, and she was one of the so-called beach friends who encouraged Miss Ford to go to Dianne Feinstein in the partisan Democrats on the Judiciary Committee. Well, it just turns out, just so happens that Monica McClain worked for Preet Bharara, the former U.S. attorney in Manhattan, now a virulent anti-Trump critic on television, and former counsel to Chuck Schumer. So I strongly suspect that Chuck Schumer's political operation knew about Miss Ford's allegations as far back as July and manipulated the process all along to include taking advantage of Miss Ford's competences and directing her towards left-wing lawyers who apparently may have violated the D.C. Code of Legal Ethics and perhaps may face their own investigation by the D.C. Bar.
Now, when we have a summing up of the consequences of this in 4 weeks at the polls, I don't believe Americans are going to forget. I think they're going to vote to make sure Mitch McConnell remains the leader in the Senate and Kevin McCarthy, the new Speaker in the House. Do you agree with me that this left a mark on American politics?
Yes, Hugh. I think most Americans, Republicans, but as well as independents and some sensible Democrats in places like Arkansas, are appalled by the left-wing mobs that Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats whipped up over the last 3 weeks. I traveled to New Jersey last week, Hugh, to campaign for my good friend Jay Weber, a Republican nominee for Congress in northern New Jersey, and the seat Rodney Fralingshousing is retiring from. The single biggest applause line of the night was for Brett Kavanaugh, and for standing up to the House Democrats who are already threatening to investigate and impeach not only Donald Trump, but Brett Kavanaugh as well. So what the Senate Democrats have awoken across the country in Senate races, now the House Democrats are bringing in their own races by threatening to investigate and impeach a fine man and someone who will be a stellar justice. I think there's going to be a consequence for those Democrats in 4 weeks today from the polls. But remember, Hugh, voting has already started in a lot of places, and our people are starting to go out and vote to show their revulsion at the left-wing mob tactics.
And I don't think they're going to stop. Tom Cotton, thank you, Senator from Arkansas. Talk to you again next week.